Hey, greetings, everyone. I'm just looking to see if anyone from OCM is here, and if you are, do you have a presentation? I want to make sure you can share your screen.
They're not here yet, Joan. I was just about to, I did confirm earlier today, and I am about to just send them the link again, so it's at the top of their box.
Thank you. For those that are on the call, just letting you know we're waiting for our presenters. Thank you.
Philip Rumsey has arrived. I just saw his name pop up on the screen. Mr.
Yes,
Rumsey?
apologies. Trying to get the complicated issues of unmuting myself and getting on camera.
Very good. Are we waiting for Pascal Bernard as well?
We were, yes,
Okay.
and she should be jumping on momentarily here. If you wouldn't mind, maybe another minute, and if not, we could certainly get started. If that would be best for the members here.
We can wait another minute. My question is, hi, I'm Joanne. I'm the chair of Community Board 14. Welcome. Do you have a presentation tonight? And will you be sharing your screen? If so, do you want to give it a test?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can give it a test. Yeah, we will. I'll be showing a PowerPoint. Let's see. Can everyone see that well?
Easy peasy.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see, stop. Did we have a specific time period that would work best? I think this was half an hour or so. I can't remember. Apologies.
A half an hour. Well, how long is your presentation, do you suppose?
Probably 20 minutes, but we could, certainly, whittle that down by a few minutes or so if needed.
I think we prefer a thorough presentation, and Sean, do we have pre-registered speakers this evening?
two.
Just two? Okay, great. So we'll hear from the pre-registered speakers. They have 3 minutes. We'll hear from board members. We should be fine on time. Thank you.
And Ms. Bernard is also with us.
I see that. Okay, excellent. Let me see if we have a quorum of board members. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I count 6. I believe we need 10, correct?
Not for a public hearing because it's not a committee, so there isn't a set number to have a percentage of.
Okay, great.
You can count me twice if you want.
Very good. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Give me 1 minute. Just checking the chat. Thank you. All right, this public hearing is called to order at 6:35 p.m. on May 18th, 2023 via WebEx. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony with respect to the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, which creates a comprehensive regulatory structure to oversee the licensure, cultivation, production, distribution, sale, and taxation of medical, adult use, and cannabinoid hemp within the state of New York. We will begin with a presentation by representatives of New York State Office of Cannabis Management. Excuse me. Afterwards, those wishing to ask questions or testify must state for the record your name and organization, if applicable, prior to giving testimony. I'll allow the members from the Office of Cannabis Management to introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Pascal Bernard, Deputy Director of Intergovernmental Affairs from the Office of Cannabis Management.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Philip Rumsey. I'm the Manager of Intergovernmental Outreach at the Office of Cannabis Management.
Thank you both for being here tonight. We look forward to your presentation. Feel free to share your screen and begin.
So what's legal in New York State? Adults over 21 can buy and possess up to 3 ounces of cannabis flower, up to 24 grams of concentrated oil, tinctures, edible vapes. Cannabis can be consumed in a private home or state licensed on-site consumption lounges. Currently, we do not have any licensed consumption lounges as of yet. And vaping and smoking cannabis is not allowed anywhere. Vaping and smoking tobacco is not allowed. The only time that you cannot smoke cannabis in the privacy of your home is if you, again, live in a space where smoking or vaping tobacco is not allowed, and if you live in public housing, because it is still an illicit drug at the federal level. This is a state law, not a federal law. Next slide, please. So what is the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act? We refer to it as MARTA or the MRTA. The MRTA was signed into law March 31st of 2021, and it created the Office of Cannabis Management, which is overseen by a 5-member Cannabis Control Board that was also created under the law. There's also a 20-member Cannabis Advisory Board, and it legalized adult use recreational marijuana and expanded the state's existing medical cannabis and cannabinoid hemp program. And really what legalization did is it shifted, the use of cannabis recreationally from criminal justice really to public health. And so think of this as a three-legged stool. The seat is public health, and the legs are public safety, social justice, and economic development. Next slide, please. So the MRTA emphasizes social and economic justice. And one of the things that happened when the law was passed was automatic record expungement for many New Yorkers. The law also invests about 40% of adult use cannabis tax revenues will go towards rebuilding communities that were disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. And it also set a goal of awarding 50% of adult use licenses to social and economic equity applicants. And so that would be people that come from communities disproportionately impacted by the war on cannabis, distressed farmers, disabled veterans. And so those would be, they would fall as, they would be equity applicants. And also social and economic equity plan and programs to help licensees be successful. And we actually just put out our C plan, which is a social and economic equity plan. And when we send after the presentation, give us about a day or two. So between Friday and Monday, we'll be sending stuff to the board and you guys will have all the links. Next slide, please. Adult use cannabis taxation. So the weight-based tax is replaced with a THC per milligram tax. And here you see where it is. It's 0.3 per milligram for edibles, 0.3 cents per milligram for edibles, 0.5 for flower, and 0.8 for THC concentrate. So think about it this way, the tax, the higher the THC, the higher the tax. So as you can see, 9% of the state excise tax on sales of cannabis products by retailers to cannabis consumers. 4% of that, the local excise tax will, 4% of that, 4% local excise tax will go to the municipality. So 25 will go to the county, 75 to the city, town, or village. Next slide, please. So how will all the tax money be used? And this slide really addresses that. So there's community reinvestment, community grant reinvestment. And so these grants will go to nonprofit and CBOs in communities that were disproportionately impacted by prohibition and other social equity initiatives, and drug treatment and public education. And so really think about it as a pie, right? And so the taxes will be used 40% for education, 40% for the community grant reinvestment, and 20% for drug treatment and public education. Next slide, please. Opportunities in the industry. So the MRTA, we have 9 different license types. And as you can see, they're all on your screen. A lot of times people, when they think about the MRTA, they think only retail dispensary. But certainly we're setting up an entire industry, and it needs a healthy cannabis ecosystem. And to have a healthy cannabis ecosystem, we have to have all these 9 different license types. Additionally, because it's still illicit at the federal level, we have to grow the product here. So all the cannabis that's sold is grown in New York State. And so as you can see, we have retail dispensary, on-site consumption. Again, we do not have that license out as of yet. We're still writing the regulations. Cultivator, nursery, processor, distributor, delivery, adult use, cooperative, and micro business. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we are, one of the ways that we're crafting this industry here in the state is we're really trying to make sure that we provide opportunities for small and mid-sized businesses in the state, as well as other businesses. And so no person may have a direct or indirect interest across tiers. This includes stock ownership. And so we've created different tiers. So there's the supply tier, the retail tier, the medical tier, and the laboratory tier. And as you can see in the supply tier, you have your cultivator, your nursery, distributor, or processor. In retail, you have your dispensary, the on-site consumption, and delivery. And then for medical, we have the registered organizations that provide medical cannabis to patients across the state. And then we have the laboratories, and those are the sampling firms. And, you know, that tier is really important because that's how New Yorkers know that they're getting safe tested products. Next slide, please. The conditional licenses. And so one of the things that we did when, you know, the law came on and, you know, the office was formed was really wanted to, you know, we wanted to jumpstart the industry. And so we created these adult use licenses, these conditional licenses. So we just talked about the MRTA licenses. So there are 9 licenses, and the licenses are in the regulations, in the regulations package passed by the Cannabis Control Board on May 11th. And then we have these conditional licenses. Again, it was a way to jumpstart the industry here in the state. These are standalone systems. So think about it as 2 paths, right? There's the MRTA licenses, and then there's the conditional licenses. And so we created 3 conditional licenses: the adult use conditional cultivator license, the adult use conditional processor license, and the adult use retail dispensary. So you have to grow it, you have to process it, and then you sell it. So that's what those 3 licenses do. Next slide, please. And so currently we have about 279 conditional cultivators with additional applications under review. With the processors, we have about 40 with additional applications under review. And for the conditional adult retail dispensary, we call that CARD, we have 215 with additional 215 licensees with additional applications under review. And so to get a CARD license, there are 2 pathways. One was nonprofits that, you know, were intentionally servicing justice-involved individuals and engage in social enterprise. And then the other is the individual license. And so you had to have been justice involved with a New York State cannabis related conviction and experience owning and operating a qualifying business. And so the individual could have applied, or qualifying family members such as a parent or guardian, a child or dependent, or a spouse. Next slide, please. The role of the community board, why we're here tonight. So the community boards, per the cannabis law, community boards and municipalities are allowed to allowed the opportunity to provide, you know, their advisory opinion on whether to support the Cannabis Control Board approval of a retail dispensary, on-site consumption, or registered organization with dispensing licenses in their area. Community boards do not have a role in other cannabis license types. So remember, we talked about the 9 license types. And so the community board does not have a role in the nursery, cultivator, processor, distributor. But again, for the retail dispensary, for the on-site consumption, and for registered organizations. And remember, we talked about the 2 retail dispensaries, right? There's one in the MRTA and then the one for the conditional. All of that is retail dispensary. So for both of those license types, they would come before the community board. Next slide, please. So people or businesses who apply for a retail dispensary on-site consumption need to submit notification to their that their proposed location is within the boundaries of your community board. So we have a 30-day notification form that the licensees have to complete and send to the community board. So we go to the, you know, the community board. Typically, I think the first people to see are the staff, because they're there. And the community board opinion will become part of the record upon which the Cannabis Control Board shall grant or deny an application for a cannabis licensee. And applicants should be afforded the appropriate amount of time needed for municipalities to opine on the proposed cannabis location. So again, once the licensee determines their location, they will then send a 30-day notification to the community board, and that would start the process of them coming before the board, and the board providing the Cannabis Control Board their advisory opinion on whether or not they think this licensee should operate in the chosen location. Next slide, please. I think. Yep. So now I turn it over to my colleague, Phil.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you, Pascal. Yeah, so I want to start off here talking about OCM enforcement activities. So after the passage of the MRTA and up until a few weeks ago, the OCM had very specific parameters that we could operate under. The MRTA, the Marijuana Regulation Taxation Act, gave OCM the power over licensed businesses in the cannabis industry, not unlicensed. OCM had been working with local authorities and trying to address the explosion of illicit shops. And these efforts included identifying these unlicensed operators, fines, store closures, and again, not having power over the non-permitted stores was an immense issue for us. During that time period, starting in January of 2022, we began sending out cease and desist letters to operators that of the illicit stores that were flagged for us. Our enforcement division was working with DAs, law enforcement, multi-agency task force at the municipal level, using anything they could, nuisance and abatement laws mostly, and some health laws as well, to try to crack down on these illicit sites that we're certainly aware are prevalent throughout New York City and the state. So this is a part of the enforcement action going into places like this. This is a before and after picture. Everything on the left had THC, and we took everything out of there, as you can see on the right side. And this was during our limited ability to really crack down on these stores. We now have new enforcement powers. So after the passage of the 2023-2024 New York State budget, there was a framework that was established for us to move forward in a much more effective manner against the illicit shops. So the budget and the language in there allows OCM to take enforcement actions against businesses selling cannabis without the required license. The sticker shops that they've become known as. It does bolster the enforcement authority of OCM. We can conduct regulatory inspections of all businesses selling and giving away cannabis. So that includes the gifting sticker stores. And it allows for the inspection of the businesses by a court order if the business does not allow OCM to come in. OCM can also seize cannabis found in unlicensed cannabis businesses. So that's a huge authority for us now, and allows OCM to assess civil penalties. We'll be working with tax and finance of New York State, and OCM will be levying these fines. I do want to flag now that the budget has passed and we're moving forward with some emergency regulations to really tie all of this in. We're going to be working with tax and finance, with the Attorney General's office and OCM, and the nuances of what kicks these things off, such as civil penalties. We're ironing that out right now. How we're going to be interacting with the different agencies and when things will kick off. So I just want to throw that out there now that we are still in the process of locking this in. However, with these new powers, we certainly have a very strong arm now to go in and crack down on these properly. As soon as we have more information on the specifics, certainly the emergency regs, we're trying to get out quickly just so we can solidify all of these new powers and work with the different agencies effectively. And we'll certainly get that over to you as soon as they come out. Additionally, we can send more information on the new powers we have along with this PowerPoint. So you'll have additional information on the new powers we have when we send this PowerPoint and additional information. So OCM does have the authority to revoke, cancel, or suspend any of the licenses given out under the cannabis law. We do have the authority to conduct regulatory inspections, including vehicles tied to the businesses where we believe the illicit activity is occurring. We now have, the ability to search for medical cannabis, adult use cannabis, cannabis product, cannabinoid hemp, and hemp extract. So this is a very wide net that we now have to crack down on the stores. And any product that's labeled as one of those categories, we can now assume that it is cannabis since it's labeled that way, since they're claiming it that, since they're charging money for it. We can now go on the assumption that it is cannabis, which allows for quicker reaction time. Additionally, we do have a verification tool. This isn't brand new, but on all legal dispensaries, we do have this. I think it's, a good 12, 13 inches tall. It's pretty prominent outside. You can take your phone, scan the QR code, and it's going to bring you to our website where it lists the legal dispensary. So you can verify right away just by scanning it and it going to our website that this is probably legitimate. And then you can look up the address itself. That's going to help New Yorkers as we shut these illicit sites down to navigate the legal dispensary route. And just as important, we still want to hear from communities. If again, we're very aware of the problem, and this is one of the reasons we pushed for this legislation was talking to community boards and knowing the impact it's having. We still need to hear from you and your constituencies. We have an email and also a form that you'll be able to click on when we send you this. You can put in as much information as possible, flag these places for us, and that will start off the process of us categorizing these, making note of them, and starting the outreach process to make sure that they're aware of what they're doing is illegal. Retail guidance. So as Pascal said, we're moving forward with a card, the conditional adult use retail dispensary, that second, the additional licensing path that Pascal was talking about. This retail guidance is one of the most important documents we have. It's close to 30 pages, and it goes into a granular level detail of what's needed in order to open up a dispensary right now. It includes inventory, tracking, location, security, facility requirements, branding, labeling, marketing, and signage, procedures that everyone will have to follow before they can open their doors. The MRTA regulations. So again, this is the large 9 license types that was mentioned earlier. We have put these out for their 60-day comment period. They came back to OCM February 13th of this year after the 60-day. On May 11th, the Cannabis Control Board passed the modified regulations based on a 60-day comment period, and OCM is looking to send those over to New York State Department of State as soon as possible. Once we get them over there, that will kick off the final, most likely final 45-day comment period for the regulations. So once that 45-day comment period ends, we will have the finalized zoning regulations and standards for the vast majority of all licensing and the cannabis industry as a whole. So the retail guidance document, we will certainly be sending this over in the email, and I would suggest anyone taking a look at it. Talks about the staffing. We will have an employee in charge at the facility, someone we can pick up the phone and call immediately if there's issues with recalls or customer complaints or an issue that we're hearing about, problems. We can pick up the phone and have a direct contact at all dispensaries. There will be extensive training as well. Anyone working here, we call them bud tenders. They'll have to go through a written manual. There are curriculum requirements they need to keep and tight record keeping from seed to sale that we will have access to. One of the things we like to flag here, and it goes to the granular level of detail that we have with these dispensaries, is the external signage. They're limited to 2 signs. There's no images, symbols, logos on them. We learned a lesson from the tobacco industry of not allowing entities to market things towards children. We control the colors they can put on their signs, the font they can put on their signs. No neon signs are allowed, so there won't be a 7-foot tall cannabis leaf flashing of all hours of the night. There's no neon signs whatsoever. So we do we want these to blend into the community, and again, that 30-page document goes to a lot of detail, and the signage is one of them. So with that being said, thank you for letting us come tonight. Flag one more email here, events@ocm.ny.gov. We certainly want to hear about events in your community that you'd like us to be aware of. And if you'd like to receive regular updates from the office, you can sign up right on our website. You go to the main page, and it's just a little bit down on that page. You can sign up for detailed information that comes out of OCM if you would like to. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And unless we addressed everything, I'm assuming there might be a couple of questions around. So yeah, happy to take some.
This looks like a quiet bunch, so I don't think they have questions.
We could log off. I mean, okay, no, I'm seeing a hand. I'm seeing hands. Never mind.
Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to go to the registered speakers first, since we don't have any. They're not present. Okay, so then I'll start with the first hand that went up, which is District Manager Sean Campbell.
Actually, I'll put my hand down now and let the board members go ahead, and I'll put it back up if it doesn't get covered.
Alrighty, next hand is Board Member Dwayne Joseph.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you all from the Office of Cannabis Management, Pascal and Philip, for presenting tonight. And I apologize for being a little late to the call. My question is around, I love the improvement that's been made, or the improvements that have been made to help you guys with enforcement. My question is, on what ends, or is there a plan to kind of manage and monitor the landlord's involvement in this process? Because, for instance, in the northern end of our district and other parts of the district, but I see it because I live in the north end, a lot of shops are popping up as entitling themselves as smoke shops. And I'm wondering what responsibility a landlord has not to rent to those kind of shops if they are aware of the fact that they are going to be selling cannabis products and do not have a license.
Yeah, one of the specific aspects actually in our new kind of power range here is to how should we put this? Certainly make sure that landlords are aware of what's going on in their store is kind of the foundational starting point for us. We want to reach out to them, make sure that they're aware of what's occurring, and really gauge their response. If an individual says we had no idea this was happening, we're going to put an end to this immediately. We can monitor that and make sure that it actually occurs. Otherwise, if we do reach out and make contact with a landlord and they're not responsive, or they simply don't care what's happening, we do have the power, and I believe this is where the Attorney General would come in. We can start levying some fines against landlords specifically after we go through a filtration process, right? We're not looking to attack landlords. We're not looking to attack small businesses. We're looking to go after people who we know are not following the law and don't care to. Once that kicks in, there is the ability to, there's the ability for us to levy, I believe it's the 3 times the amount of rent that's being given to the landlord. So we do have the ability here to crack down more effectively on landlords, and certainly um, um, certainly make sure that anyone who's intentionally allowing this to happen cannot proceed. I brought up the language real quick just to be more clear. And if an owner fails to remove the retailer, the owner may face up to 3 times the amount of rent that was charged during the violation. So the property owner can be held liable for the cost of the legal proceedings as well to the state. So again, I consider this more of a balancing act of we are not going out tomorrow and trying to take away stores or start levying fines against people. There will be a strict scrutiny before we can implement that. And I'll flag again, I don't have the granular details because that's what's being worked out in the emergency regulations that we're creating right now to properly implement this across 3 different bureaucracies. So we do have that power to go after and inform landlords quite a bit. And we'll be sending that information, as I said, additional information on our new power along with this slide as well.
Thank you.
And think about it, there are gradations, right? There's step 1, you don't do what you're supposed to do, you go up to step 2. And so that's how this is all going to work. We can't just out the gate, as Phil said, go after people.
Thank you very much. The next question will be from Board Member Joe Dweck.
Thank you, and thank you, Pascal and Philip. You folks must be incredibly frustrated. You certainly have. You're trying to empty an ocean with a thimble, with the amount of illegal stuff going on, which is not what you intended. It's obviously the intent. It's very laudable for the people of the community to operate these shops, and we don't know if anybody who properly is doing it. Certainly in the taxation of it, the regulation of it, the issue of right now it's in schools, right next to schools. There's about 1 million things that you must be frustrated about. I'd love to know, how do you think you're going to get there from here? Right now, I'm sure it's less than 1/10% is legal that you can certainly enforce. What about the other 99.9%? How do you tend to get that under control? Thank you.
So I think, it's, some of it is what Phil talked about with Dwayne's question, right? We have new enforcement powers. And so we're going to be using, the enforcement powers to ensure that we protect the health and safety of New Yorkers and protect this emerging industry. And then the other part of it is we continue to license individuals who apply for the conditional license. Dispensaries continue to open. And so that is the other part of it too. So, it's not a single track. There are several, kind of trains leaving the station, I should say. So one is the enforcement. The other is we're licensing people. Dispensaries are opening all across the state, and they will continue to open. And then I think the third piece too is our public education campaign. We do have a public education campaign. We send the information out widely. We will make sure that it's in the email that we're sending to the board called Why Buy Legal. And it really explains to New Yorkers why they should not, go to the illicit market for product. And so it is a multi-pronged approach to dealing with this. And additionally, we have been dealing with enforcement, as you saw in some of the pictures in the slides that Phil talked about. We work in conjunction with the New York City Sheriff's Department, the NYPD, local DAs in the borough, DOHMH, Department for Worker Protection. So it's an interagency task force that really has been dealing with this. We now have greater enforcement power and will be able to do more. And so it will happen. And I know that right now, as we're saying this, there might be some skepticism. You know, we're New Yorkers, I get that. But we literally just got this new enforcement power, what, Phil, 2 weeks, if that?
Yeah, just under 2 weeks, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, so you know, we're creating the plan, but we continue to investigate. We continue to go after bad actors.
Can we agree that we need to enforce near schools first?
So we agree that we need to enforce everywhere. And so we are doing that. And again, we will continue to do that. And with the greater enforcement powers, we will be able to do more. And I think as it relates to schools, and I'm not sure if we mentioned this, but dispensaries have to be 200 feet away from a house of worship, 500 feet from a school. If there are, and as with SLA, if it's a dual use building, so like with me, I live in Harlem, 135th Street, we have Thurgood Marshall Academy, but there's an IHOP also on the ground level. So that 500-foot rule would not apply. And it's the same thing with SLA. But we do have that. So if you see any dispensaries that are within 200 feet, 500 feet, house of worship, school, it's not a licensed dispensary. That's one of the ways that you know that it's not a licensed dispensary. But we're also working with sister agencies, and we're building, creating assets and information to share out with parents, with educators, with kids, so that they understand the dangers as well. So yes, we are enforcing, and we're removing you know, these illicit shops from areas near schools and you know, other spaces. But we also have to, in addition, have these conversations, right? I'm a parent of a 15-year-old and a almost 13-year-old. I constantly talk to my kids about this because they need to know. And I help them identify what are the illicit shops. Like, that's not legal. And I even tell them, I share with them, your brain's not fully formed until you're 25. So before you're 25, you shouldn't be smoking, drinking, nothing. You know, and that's some of the things that need to happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on. We have quite a few questions. So the remaining people that are going to ask, because we do have a committee meeting after this, we'll start with Jonathan, Carl, Sean Campbell, Ornella Parker, and then myself, and then we will conclude this public hearing. So Jonathan, please go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon. I was at the sorry, at the meeting on Tuesday past. If you remember, I was with my brother from Bud Bodega. I do have a question. It's kind of a little repetitive, but there are over 1,400 illicit stores in New York City, and a lot of them have sold to minors. I've witnessed it with my own 2 eyes in my own neighborhood. So I know you stated that you don't want to, go after these small businesses, but why not? If they're doing something, one, it's illegal already that they're selling it. And the second part, they are selling it to high school students, junior high school kids, and why shouldn't they have a hefty fine or a hammer, so to speak, come down on them?
So I think there's a miscommunication. We do plan to go after illicit shops.
Yes, I
Yeah, we're
understood
gonna
that
go
part, but
after.
there are some that are specifically purposely selling towards minors, and the OCM, or I'm not sure which department, have done raids where they close them down and then they open up the next day under a different LLC. They've even changed the name of the shop outside, so it's not really. Do do you think that maybe you guys need to come up with a better solution on how to prevent that, because it's like a burn and churn type of business that they're doing. They're open this week, then another week it's a different business, a different logo, different name. I can send you pictures, like I have proof of that.
No, yeah, and I think part of the frustration that we're feeling and that you're experiencing the same way were the limited powers we had when the MRT was created. We did not have power over cannabis. We had power over individuals who had licenses from us. And obviously, none of those stores had licenses from us. They were all illegal. It's a new world now that we have these new powers. It's really a game changer. We literally had, trouble entering a facility that was clearly selling illicit cannabis because of the powers we had in the MRTA or the lack of powers. We had to use a variety of ways. Sometimes, if an individual had a CBD license that has nothing to do with THC, if they were selling THC products, that was a licensed entity. So we could go in there immediately because we have power over only licensed entities. So we were always held back constantly. Now that we have a much broader range of powers, we are going to go after them. The reason I wanted to say we can't, overnight is, due process. We need to establish that individuals know they're breaking law, establish that they're ignoring our cease and desist letters. And every time that happens, every notch we move up, it gives us more and more broader authority through fines and through taking the individual's right to collect sales tax. We have that power now as well. So they wouldn't be able to sell a stick of gum out of that store legally. So with the range of powers you now have, I mean, I think we're mostly in agreement here with the problems that are facing. And every time we give out a new license, there's more and more people who see this as the truly impactful problem that it is on the legal marketplace. So, yeah, we are taking a lot of steps. The individual asked the question before about what we can do right now. We're continuing to send cease and desist letters, which I know sound toothless, but they set the legal foundation for us to move forward with hefty fines. That was the other problem we had. We could bust these stores 2 months ago, and we would charge, and we'd have the ability to charge them $500, and they could make that up in 5 minutes of opening up their shop. So with the increased power, you're going to see a night and day difference.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to District Manager Sean Campbell.
Thank you. And I did add a comment in the chat that community members are always welcome to call our office. Some of the stuff is still enforceable by NYPD and the sheriff's office. So working with OCM's expanded powers, we can certainly suss out the most expeditious way to address some of these concerns. But I kind of want to get into some details of the process. And I'm going to say some things that I know you've heard before at OCM, but a 30-day notification is really close to inadequate. Depending on a board calendar goes out 2 weeks before the following month. And we have a charter mandated legal obligation to inform the public 10 days in advance of a public hearing. And then the recommendation from that hearing has to go to a full board meeting. So because of all of the vagaries of all of these dates falling into place so that we can fit it into 30 days, it just isn't going to happen as often as it might need to happen. So I know you've heard the request for an extended, even 60-day notification come before you. I'm also concerned about the sensitive sites. I know the 200-foot rule and the 500-foot rule for exclusive use schools and houses of worship. And I think you didn't mention, unless I missed it, there's also a 1,000-foot rule where a licensed dispensary or licensed retailer cannot be within 1,000 feet of another licensed one, but that doesn't consider the number of unlicensed ones. So I'd like that to be considered too. And then adding to the sensitive location is a concern that there be some distance between supportive housing facilities and treatment centers, because there are people in these types of congregant housing who, as a matter sometimes of their parole, cannot be using cannabis even under the updated rules and regulations. So some sensitivity to people for whom proximity could be problematic, I think should be considered a little bit further. And then quickly and finally, whether it's a 30-day notice or hopefully someday a 60-day notice, what does that look like? Because I have heard from people who claim that they will be opening or plan to open or have a license to open, and I've never seen a 30-day notification. And I feel like I can't ask my board to sit down and hear something that I haven't received official notification for. So I see that they have to certify mail or hand deliver and all of that, but is it a standardized form the way, sorry, but it's a good reference, the way SLA 30-day notices look?
The proposed regulations and the comment period, right? So the public comment period is a conversation between government and constituent. And so the proposed regulations are part of the conversation, the public comment period, and everything that you just, you just kind of talked about, all those points. You guys as a community board or individuals can send those public comments to us and then it will be considered. So if it's not, if you don't send it during the public comment period, it's hard to consider. We can certainly say, hey, this is what we've heard from this community, but it needs to be part of the record. And so I encourage you all to please either, again, as a collective or as individuals or both, to send comments during the public comment period, because that is when we have to hear your side of the conversation and
I
hear what you
appreciate that.
think.
Yeah, and I think you might hear it from a few different entities, this board and I know you have it in writing from other boards and from the Future of Community Board group, but
Yes.
the more the merrier.
Yes, and we've heard this from other parts of the state too. We are a state agency, and so we deal with municipalities across the state, and we've heard this as well. And so we always encourage people to please do that. And Phil just put in the chat what the notification to municipalities should look like. And so if you just click on that link, you'll be able to see what the form looks like. And we do meet, there is a time where OCM and DASNY meets with, we have a webinar for licensees, and we do talk about the notification to municipalities, and we stress very strongly that they need to fill it out completely, because what we're seeing is sometimes people are just, I think, so rushed to get it out that they're not completely filling it out. And so then the municipality or the community board is like, well, I don't have all the information. So we are definitely stressing to people that they please complete the entire form.
Thank you very much. Sean, you're good? Because I'm going to move on to the land. Okay. Ornella Parker, I saw your hand was up for quite a long time. I just want to invite you to ask your question. Otherwise, I'll ask mine and we will close this public hearing.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my question is a little bit aligned with our district manager. I'm just wondering, we spoke a lot about like regulation and around the illicit ones that are not licensed, but I'm wondering how can community boards, or like what is the thought process and plan around getting more licensed stores out, and how do we make that process streamlined so that it is actually accessible to these areas? Because I feel like the more licensed stores we have, the more we're able to regulate more efficiently, opposed to what's happening now where we have all these illegally run shops. And how does the community board play in that? I know we're an advisory to it, but things like filling out the application you just named, right? Like how do we ensure that they know what that needs to look like, so when they do come in front of the community board, they are it's equitable and they have a fair shot at like obtaining a license, as long as they're within the guidelines.
So as I said, we have a webinar for licensees, and we do talk about the form and completing it and making sure that it is completed thoroughly. We continue to issue licenses, and I guess the other piece of it, in your borough specifically, of the 5 boroughs, Brooklyn was the last borough to get licensees, and that was because of the court injunction. But as soon as it was lifted, we, licensees from Brooklyn, applicants from Brooklyn got licenses and they're now licensees. And so they're looking for their retail locations. And so I think that's some of the holdup as it relates to why aren't there more stores in your borough? It's because for quite a while now, we weren't able to do anything. But again, the injunction was lifted, people were licensed, they are looking for locations. And so that will also help with the number of licensed shops in your borough and in your area.
I would just add, it does take a while to get dispensaries up and running. Unfortunately, they are, it's a build out process. It's one reason we partnered with the Dormitory Authority of New York State, DASNY, to assist in grabbing some locations, and they are running the fund to help fund these as well, specifically just for the conditional dispensaries. Yeah, unfortunately, we are trying to move forward as quickly as possible. And I can assure you, everyone agrees with that statement you made about more licensed stores will help push back on the illicit sites. Very true, in my opinion as well. And so we are trying to move forward as efficiently as possible right now. And unfortunately, it can take a bit to get the leases signed, to get the stores built out, connect consumer and the product. But we are moving as efficiently as we can at the moment.
Thank you very much. So I'll ask just one question and then we'll close out this public hearing. And I'll just also state for the record that without a doubt, 30-day notification is not enough for at least the community board entity, and we will respond to the public comment period as such. Thank you. So I'm thinking about the difficulties that the New York City Sheriff has had in enforcement. And I know the size of their department, and I'm curious as to the size of your enforcement unit. I know that it's new. It was just sort of approved through the last budget process. So what I'm just looking for is sort of an answer to capacity. If the sheriff has had a difficult time dealing at their capacity, difficult time dealing with illicit stores, how do you see yourself situated there? Thank you.
So actually our enforcement division, our enforcement department is the fastest growing in our agency. And they're the largest as well. So we continue to bring staff on, and we've had an enforcement department since the agency opened up, and it just has grown. And in this last budget, there was more funding for us to bring on even more enforcement agents. So I don't have a full number right now, just because that number is very fluid. Every 2 weeks, they're bringing in new people because that's when they kind of cycle in new staff. But we do have enforcement agents across the state, and that's why we work in a interagency task force, because we're able to pool resources from several agencies and deal with the issue that way. And so as we continue to grow, we're partnering with agencies and law enforcement entities, and we have the new enforcement powers. We will be attacking this with just greater speed, and people will start to see the difference with these enforcement powers and the new staff we have coming on.
Yeah, and my only comment real quick here is that when you were making the comparison with the sheriff's office, I don't have the exact number either. I believe there were 73 lines for additional people in the budget. As you said, it was specifically for OCM enforcement, though. That was the only division that had lines for additional jobs in the budget. So not only was the enhanced power in the budget, it was also 73 additional lines to help beef that up. My only caveat here with the sheriff's department, it's not so much a capacity issue as it is a law issue. And the law just changed a few weeks ago. So even though the sheriff's office, has much substantial more resources, if you're charging someone 1 penny for driving 80 miles an hour in a 65, you're probably going to have a lot more people speeding. If you charge them hundreds of dollars and make them appear in front of court, you'll probably have less people speeding. We were implementing that 1 penny fee for speeding, the equivalent of that in the cannabis industry. Our fines were too low. We didn't have the power to even walk into the store without pre-existing conditions. And now that's opened up. So it's not so much a capacity as it was restrictive laws. The MRTA was trying to pull back the Rockefeller laws. And in doing so, I think they may have overlooked some of the more kind of human elements here of people are going to open up stores. If they can make money, they're going to do it really quick. And we only have small fines to push back on. All that's changed. So we're increasing capacity, which will help. And we actually have laws that we can push off of, as opposed to trying to jump off of jelly or something like that. And we will have enforcement people in New York City. We already do. We have enforcement people in Albany, and we will have enforcement people in our Buffalo office as well.
And I'll also add, SLA is like the big brother. And so a lot of things were, we kind of modeled and took from them. They only have jurisdiction over licensed liquor sellers, right? They didn't have jurisdiction over unlicensed. And so I think that's also part of it. Like in addition to the Rockefeller, we were also looking at SLA and was like, oh, well, this is how they do it. And so I think that's a part of how we, why we're so happy to have these new enforcement powers. We're able to attack the problem in a way that will make a real dent. And again, it's going to take a little bit of time, but it will happen. We will have the emergency regs. As soon as we have them, we will make sure that the community board receives them so that, you can take a look and again, engage in this conversation with us. But yeah. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much for the clarification. It sounds, I'm happy to hear that, your expanded power and the expansion of penalties and regulations is really going to help across the state. So with that, I want to thank you both for being here and joining us in this conversation in this public hearing. Thank you for your presentation. And we look forward to seeing the expansion of what just came about. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. Thank you, Philip.
And with that, I will close this public hearing at 7:31 p.m. And we will immediately move into our executive committee meeting. Not seeing very many members of the executive committee. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there, I'm sorry, remind me, Sean, there's no limit, right? There's no quorum limit. We're not really making any decisions. We're just having a discussion.
Yeah, it's a report out.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. This executive committee meeting is beginning at 7:31 p.m. on May 18th, 2023. Our only agenda item, as opposed to new business, if anyone shall bring any up, is a report on district manager time and leave policy at separation or termination. So the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is because, well, first, let me open that there are no immediate plans for the district manager, Sean Campbell, to separate from CB14 or city service.
Or be terminated?
Or be terminated. Absolutely not.
Thank you.
I only said termination because that's how it is written in the law. Our discussion is based on an event that occurred in another community district where the longtime district manager of 30 years retired and the leave time accrued at payout was exorbitant. And it caused a major disruption to funds available in the community board's personal service lines of their budget. Okay. During a meet and greet with the borough president and community board chairs in March, it was emphasized that chairs should understand the policy for leave payout at separation and commence due diligence to determine their financial liability. So the law defining the benefits of payout is Personnel Order 88/5, dated April 28th, 1988, entitled Leave Regulations for Management Employees, and was thus amended by Mayor Giuliani on January 1st, 2000. When a management employee, such as a district manager, separates from employment, annual leave and sick leave are payable to the employee. Based on the final separation date notice to the board, the Human Resources Department of Borough Hall will inform the Office of Management and Budget with the available accrued leave time. OMB will then, based on this accrued time, construct a hold on the personnel service portion of the community board's budget to cover the leave payout. Borough Hall HR will then send separation of service information to the New York City Comptroller's Office for computation based on the separation date, the accrued balance of leave, and the limits of the law. Once computated, this dollar figure is sent back to OMB, and the budget hold will be adjusted to meet the payout. The payout period is elected by the employee for tax purposes, so it could be 1 year or 2 year. The employee may elect to receive disbursement over more than 1 year, thus lowering the annual personnel service budget hold for the community board. The manager is not required to take disbursement over more than 1 year, and this is at their discretion. Regarding District Manager Sean Campbell's banked leave time, she, for the most part, uses her annual leave annually and does not carry over more than the 2-year maximum year to year. As for sick leave, she has reached beyond the maximum amount of accrual of such leave that can be paid out at separation, which based on her length of service is 420 hours or 60 days. At separation, because of her length of service is greater than 10 years, she will be entitled to 1/3 sick leave payment at maximum accrual and annual at maximum, which is 318 hours, unless the chair has approved carryover beyond that maximum. So let me explain that a little bit more. So the maximum that can be paid out is 318 hours, unless, let's say she has superseded that, at the end of 2023, and the chair authorizes the carryover of those additional hours. If the chair does not authorize that, then those hours over the maximum of 318 would be paid out as if they were sick leave. So that would be at a rate of 1/3. So the reason why we're talking about this tonight, we're still calculating the figures. There's nothing alarming. If District Manager Sean Campbell should decide that she is going to separate from service at the end of 2023, our budget would be fine. And the reason why we're talking about this is because I just also want to instill some institutional knowledge here that these are items that were never discussed with me when I became chair, and I just want the board to also understand the procedures at which, when a district manager separates from service, that we will be paying out of our budget the accrued annual leave, which is basically vacation and paid time off, personal, and then sick leave. So I'll leave it there for questions. I hope that I was clear. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions. I'll start with Dwayne. And
before they ask questions, can I just clarify something else? I think it also sort of came up as because I did become eligible for retirement in January. So that does raise the question. It's not a plan that I have, but I also recognize that I serve at the pleasure of the board. But I did want to add that there's I'm eligible to retire, and so that does make the discussion that much more relevant.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Dwayne.
This is just for the math. At what rate, as far as hours per day, do we calculate? Is it 7 or 8? Like, for instance, do we have a 35 hour? Is the city working? It's 7.
35.
Okay, thank you.
So it's 7 a day. And the rate at which it's calculated is based on what they do for annual leave. It's what's called first in, first out. So let's say they work their way backwards. So the rate at which the employee is being paid now, during that time, they'll take those hours away that were accrued, and then they work backwards. When they get to the 6-year mark, it's a weighted average of the salaries past there. I will take a question from Joe Dweck. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman Brown. My question is that we have been extremely short-staffed over the past year or more than that, and Sean has been working like crazy in order to try to ameliorate those conditions. I don't think it's at all fair for someone to work so hard and not reap what she's due in any way, shape, or form. Especially that if there's a budget hold, did the money that we did not pay out for help that we were trying to so desperately get, did that get banked, so to speak, where we can call on that to try to use it? But I don't think it's fair. Am I wrong? What do you feel?
Well, I am not at all saying that we are taking anything away from her. Everything that I am describing to you is law 88/5. Okay. So we are not doing anything to erode what she is owed. All I'm doing here is informing you, because I'm not sure that if the executive committee and other board members know that there is a payout, and that will come out of our budget. So I hope you understand that we're not taking anything away. We're just analyzing the situation to make sure that we have no surprises. Does that make sense?
I'm just asking that when we were understaffed.
The answer is no. There is no carrying over from one fiscal year to another fiscal year any monies. There's been talk in the future of community boards groups of banking money that wasn't spent by community boards into a staff payout fund or something like that. But the city, isn't listening very closely to community boards on many things, and that goes into that bucket. And as Joanne said, there's no real at this point, and for the foreseeable amount of time that I would likely continue service at the community board, like up to age 62 or, more standard retirement ages, there isn't a calculation by which this board gets into trouble. I mean, the OMB holds something like, I think this year they held $20,000 in the PS budget until toward the very end of the year when it was clear that nobody was leaving. And then that was the money we reaped in order to do the digital records project. So there is some money that OMB makes us hold for, for severance, which isn't the right word, but for separation payment. And then, we have a little bit of money in the budget, at the end of the year, usually that we end up spending on something that could go toward the personnel needs, should there be a separation or termination. And then 2, there's always the possibility that you wouldn't pay an incoming district manager the same salary you're paying somebody who's worked now 12 years, and then 13, 14, 15 years. So there could just be some flexibility in the salary of an incoming. I think what this board is not in danger of is not being able to hire an incoming district manager, right at the tail end, dovetailing with the exit of the current one. So that I feel like, unless Joanne feels a little more risk averse than I do, I think it's fair to say that there isn't really a scenario by which that happens.
Right. So based on the current behavior of use of hours that district manager Sean Campbell does from year to year. I do not foresee us being in danger of not being able to fully transition with, day ends with District Manager Campbell and then day begin with the new district manager. And again, there are mechanisms in which we can make this work. What all started this again was a situation where there was so much that had to be paid out because that person probably had a position, before that where they actually had vested time and banked time. Right now, we're just talking about accrued time, right? So vested, banked, and accrued time. And it was a substantial amount of money, so much that they were not able to hire a district manager for quite a long time until they could recoup their budget. But again, I'm standing here before you to say this, that I want everybody to have this institutional knowledge that we're not working in a vacuum and that we all have expectations of what's going to happen. I'm not going to be chair forever. Another board member will be chair. And so they will know this in their mind. They will know that this is one of the activities. These are one of the duties of the chair in which they have to pay attention to. Any other questions?
I didn't mean to say that there was a personal thing that you were doing, Joanne. Obviously,
No, I know.
it was institutional. But obviously, the fact that the budgetary constraints of the city year to year does not get banked is hurting us. Might hurt us in the future. And by the way, the new person, we have to get a great person. We've always had great people, and we might have to pay top dollar for a person in the future. Sorry. Thanks.
Yes, of course, that would be commensurate with experience and so forth. So I see, Hindi, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry, I just had to mute. I just wanted to comment that however much money we pay, I'm sure we're never going to get someone like Sean. Just making a comment, and that Sean is worth all the money in the world. And I mean, we now know what we have to do, and thank you for informing us, Joanne. And you guys are great, and we just love working with you. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Hindi. I agree. Dwayne, you have your hand up. Second round.
Yeah, I mean, just I want to just comment. Just want to say that I appreciate this discussion being had, because it's something that needs to happen, obviously, and also just for the sake of legacy information. I mean, previous board members and previous chairs may have been aware of it, but as a board member now, I'd like to know especially as now being part of the executive board, what responsibilities we have to the staff that's there, to Sean, to the other Patricia and Sarah that are there. I think it's just important for us to have this. So I appreciate you guys even bringing this discussion forward.
Thank you. Yeah, again, full transparency, just more important to me that everyone on this board has a clear idea of what the duties are of the chair. The chair is the head of the agency. The community board is an agency. And there's a lot that goes into that. So I just, wanted to make sure that full responsibility is conveyed across to all board members. Any additional questions? So again, we're going to continue to analyze the numbers. Hopefully by September of next year, we'll have a better idea. But again, from this point in time, I don't feel worried about this. All right, Sean, did you have anything you wanted to conclude with? I don't see any additional questions or hands.
No, thanks everybody for listening. And yeah, if there are any follow-up questions though, you know where to find us.
All right, well, thank you. I think this is the shortest executive committee meeting ever. And we'll reconvene at the beginning of next cycle thereabouts to continue the discussion, so on and so forth. All right, if there is nothing left to say, I would be happy to adjourn this committee meeting. And it was nice to see you all.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Your leadership is astounding. God bless you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you,
Sean.
Joanne.
All right,
Thanks,
everyone.
Joanne. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sean,
everyone.
Joanne, everybody.
Thanks,
Have
guys.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Have a great
Sean,
night.
before you Before you log off, just a quick question, not related to the executive committee meeting. By any chance, did the board get information, street closures for the Brooklyn half?
Yeah.
Is it on the site? Forgive me, I hadn't had a chance to look, so if I'm being lazy, forgive
No,
me.
it's not on the site. We can try to put it up tomorrow.
Okay.
But it's the same as it's always been. It's just it's the Ocean Avenue, or I mean, sorry. Yeah, Ocean Parkway closure.
You know, I usually try to post about it in the local groups, and there's been some interest. People have DM'd me like, do I have a listing of the actual street closures? I usually put the map up and advise people to make schedule changes accordingly. But
I'll
if you have
email
something,
you.
that'd be
I'll email
great.
you. As soon as we close out here, I'll email you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Can you
guys.
share with me as well, please? Thank you.
Generally, it's a good idea to stay off the roads. This is my experience, but yeah,
Yes.
anything close to Ocean Parkway, like you run the risk of really getting stuck for a while.
Yeah, unfortunately, I need to be out there, so.
Yeah.
Leave early.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Or leave your car on, the other thing is just to leave your car on the other side of Ocean Parkway. But I'll get the
Right.
maps. I'll get the maps to you all right now.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Good night,
Bye.
all.
Wonderful
Good night, everyone.
evening. Okay.